The lesson you are about to watch was taped in a grade 1 classroom. Students will be engaged in small reading groups. Mrs. Atkinson and Mrs. Gerula will be integrating non-fiction text strategies with a focus on the science concepts of light and sound. Prior to breaking off into small groups, Mrs. Atkinson engaged students in an anticipation guide, where students activated their prior knowledge about science concepts. Let's watch as Mrs. Atkinson uses a signal to have her students provide feedback.
If you disagree, you're going to give us a thumbs down. And if you're unsure, if you're not sure about the statement, you're going to put your thumbs sideways. And then after we learn and explore all about light and sound today, we're going to come back to these.
Mrs. Atkinson selected portions of a text from the school-wide kit that was above the Jumpstart students' reading levels. During this interactive read-aloud, the teacher modeled asking and answering questions and the importance of using text features.
To learn more about science. Let's continue reading to discover more information about sound while we notice the different text features and wonder like scientists. Throw a pebble into a pond. I can kind of make a connection to that because one time I threw a pebble into a pond and I kind of noticed something going around when I did that. Raise your hand if you ever thrown a pebble into a pond before. What kind of happens? A circle and a splash. It's kind of like a ripple, right? I wonder if it kind of has a name to it. Should I read on to find out? Are we continuing to ask wonder questions? We sure are. And are we continuing to gain more information? That's what scientific readers do. Throw a pebble into a pond. Watch how the ripples move away from the splash. So here's the splash. So these must be the ripples. Sound moves in waves like ripples in the pond. Sound waves move in all directions from a baseball bat, a raindrop, or anything else that makes sound. Sound waves. That's a new and interesting vocabulary word. I bet we're going to continue to use those terms sound waves as scientists. The waves travel through the air to your ears, but you can't see them. Sound waves are invisible. For example, when I just made my triangle vibrate, can you see the sound waves? Why? Why can't you see the sound waves? They're invisible. I just learned that as a scientist by reading this text. And I noticed another text feature. It's a... Remember I read one on this page? It's a fun fact. Another fun fact. So as scientists, as we continue to explore some text, I think the author is going to include more fun facts to teach us. Sound waves travel through water too. Whales and dolphins hear sound waves in the ocean. I always wondered how they heard each other in the ocean. What do they hear? Sound waves. I just added to my schema as a scientist. Now today, you are going to get a copy of this page. And have you been using think marks with Mrs. Gerula and marking up your text? So if you learn something new, you can put an N because that's something new that you learned. For example, I would put the letter N by sound waves because I just learned that new vocabulary. I also made a connection to the part of throwing a pebble into a pond. So what letter would I put? Right, it's a connection, so what letter would I put?
C.
A C. So right now, your job as scientific readers is to mark up this text using your think marks, and then we're going to share our think marks together. Thumbs up if that sounds good. So Max, can you tell me what our job is? What are we going to do today when we get this close read? Use those things. What are those things called? Think marks. Does everyone understand what your task is? Okay, here is your close read. And I'm going to give you a pencil for your think marks. Remember, as you're going back a second time, if you have difficulty reading a word, you can continue to use your reading strategies, like look for chunks, get your mouth ready, look for little words. What did you just put there? A C for a connection. Does your C look like this C? Great thinking. Oh, you also made a C. Lots of connections. Let's think about what new vocabulary we learned today. What words were new to us? Sound waves, right? So what letter should we put by sound waves? An N for new information. Are you thinking like a scientist? What are you going to mark by? Connection? What did you make a connection with? What was this girl doing? Throwing a pebble into a pond, and you've done that before. That's why you put the C for connection, right? Ooh, why did you put an N there? New information. Great job. Stella, did you add anything yet? What did you add? N for new information. What was new to you? Is a pebble a coin? No, but it kind of could be the same size of a coin, right? What is a pebble? What could help it? It's a rock, like a big rock or a small rock? Small. I love how you just asked that question. You were continuing to wonder. You weren't sure. And that's great that you reached out to us to ask that question. That's what scientists do. Great thinking. Once you're done with your think marks, I'm going to give you a copy of the text, loud, soft, high, and low, and continue to think about what you learned today from this text, and then we're going to share with our friends in our group. So if you're done with your think marks, give me a thumbs up. And you can read up until you get to that post-it note. Are you still working on your think marks? So you made a connection. What new information did you learn? What new vocabulary did you add? That's great. You made a connection. Don't have to erase that. Did you learn about sound waves? We did. So what should we put by sound waves? Great job. Are you ready to reread?
And it says scientists use evidence to write about what they learned. Use evidence from the post all about sound to answer the following questions. So this is your third read. You're reading for skill. You're reading for the scientists to be able to write about what you learned. So before we begin, I want you to just listen to this. Question number one.
Are you paying attention to those new text features that we learned about? Like those fun facts? And those headings at the top are so important to read.
Sound is. And the second question is, how is sound made? And you're going to write sound is.
That can be connection because that's what we just did today. We kind of just explored with that triangle, didn't we? So if I was continuing to mark up, I would put a C for connection.
You might use your statement in your brain. Why not see in front of you? What you know about light and sound in your statement. Question 10.
Okay, let's quickly share something that we learned today as signs of the readers. We learned about sound waves. Anything else we learned about? We learned about that sound waves are invisible, and I learned about that word vibrate. For example, I just made what vibrate? The ruler. So scientific flavors to notice things that vibrate in our world. Excellent job, scientific readers. Features that will help us explore and learn more about text. We learned that readers use tables of contents to help locate information. What do you notice about the table of contents? What do we notice about the table of contents?
Right, when we thought about bristling, we thought about the bristles of a brush. We're using our schema, something that we already know, right?
What do we notice?
Very, very good. Okay, so today, when we're reading, we're going to think about the words we don't know. And we're going to write down what we think it means. Question mark word is, and what we think it means. Up and down. If something goes up and down.
That's yours? That's okay. You can have the same wonder. I wonder how a guitar makes sound. Use your word ball word. Okay, what was your sentence?
Can you find the picture?
What was you wondering about? I wonder how a drum makes sound. I wonder how a drum makes sound.
Right, maybe basketball at home or basketball, right?
Components of a Jumpstart lesson were used as the students wrote a sentence. Watch as Mrs. Atkinson integrates the Jumpstart reading strategies, such as get your mouth ready and use your chunks to help tackle challenging words.
And as scientists, we're going to continue to explore to see if we can find out how things make sound. Okay, so let's go back and reread, because if we forget, we know rereading is a strategy. Oh, what are you writing? What word? Are you writing drum? Guitar, because when you get your mouth ready, you need the gut sound. I wonder how a guitar. Oh, I hear the R tones. R-R-R-E, and the letters are. I wonder how.
You are about to view a lesson by Mrs. Gerula. Watch as Mrs. Gerula activates prior knowledge and discusses previous text read.
We've been asking questions about what we're reading, and then we've been inferring the answer. Today, we're going to do some questioning and inferring, but we're going to use it to help us understand the meaning of new words that we come across as we read. Because we know as readers, our job is to look for new words and figure out what they mean. Okay, so I have this chart here, and it says good readers use different clues to infer word meaning. So some of the strategies we use are we reread. If you don't understand, we might go back and reread a little bit. That might help us. We use the pictures or the photographs to help us. We can use other things that are written in the text. Remember, we learned yesterday that sometimes the meaning of a word is right there in the text for us. We can use our schema, which is what we already good. And we can use another source. And we did this. An example of this was when we read a story yesterday, and we were trying to figure out the word of the meaning of the word bristling. Do you remember that? What did we use to help us figure out what bristling meant? Because that was a really tough word. Daria?
Mrs. Gerula is engaging students in a close read. She confers with individual students to check for understanding and provide feedback and support as they use think marks to show their thinking.
Those are all different sounds. One of the things we're trying to find out are what are some examples of sounds. So what think mark are you going to put there? A shadow. Very good. Awesome, Jack. Great job. All right.
Transparent objects. What do you think transparent means? Transparent. Let's use our photographs. What's transparent?
Would you like to add that?
anything you can predict.
This window is transparent. And the windows in your classroom are transparent.
Can you make a connection?
What do you think transparent means?
Are there any sounds that they talk about in the passage that you read? Yeah, which sounds?
There's three words. Can you see through your window?
Laughing, right? So you can put a C for a connection to make a connection that whenever you're laughing, you're making a sound.
An object. Windows and eyeglasses are transparent. Why is a window transparent?
Put your hand over
Because the light can go through it.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Why are eyeglasses transparent?
Very good. What did you visualize?
The light can also go through it. Take a look. What is transparent? Why?
What connection did you make?
The light is through it. Transparent means the light to go through. I'm not transparent. The light cannot go through me. A window is transparent.
Right, because we just did that before, right? We sang while we put our hands on our throat, right? Very good. Awesome.
After students have read through the text, they participate in a reading response. Students were asked to think like scientists and support their answers with evidence from the text.
What is sound? Can you name all of those things? Very good. Ooh, where did you get that? Sound is singing. Where did you get that from? Can you show me? Where does it say that? Very good evidence.
Is the sun dull or is it very bright? See if you can find that word bright. If I know.
Anthony, can you show me where you're finding your evidence?
Your job is to find the word bright.
What does that text part of the text tell you?
It has my school one. Does it continue to have that?
Very good. Excellent. Fantastic. Oh, good job, Noah. I see you looking right back in that text and using evidence. Very good. Wow, you guys are really thinking like scientists.
Mrs. Gerula introduced the book and asked students to recall what schema they had about light. She then presented a vocabulary chart and pointed out that as readers, it is important to find unfamiliar words and decide what we think they mean.
Use it to help us understand the meaning of new words that we come across as we read. Because we know as readers, our job is to look for new words and figure out what they mean. Okay? So I have this chart here, and it says, good readers use different clues to infer word meaning. So some of the strategies we use are we reread. If we don't understand, we might go back and reread a little bit. That might help us. We use the pictures or the photographs to help us. We can use other things that are written in the text. Remember, we learned yesterday that sometimes the meaning of a word is right there in the text for us. We can use our schema, which is what we already know. Good. And we can use another source. And we did this. An example of this was when we read a story yesterday, and we were trying to figure out the word of the meaning of the word bristling. Do you remember that? What did we use to help us figure out what bristling meant? Because that was a really tough word. Daria?
Students were then instructed to whisper read the text while looking for unfamiliar words.
But in a nonfiction book, we usually call it a glossary.
That's what they'll say.
Right? Now this glossary is a little bit different than the ones we've looked at because usually the glossary will give you the actual definition, and this one is a glossary that just gives you pictures. So it's a little bit different, but it's still helpful, right? It's a helpful text feature.
At the end of the lesson, the group charted new words and their meaning, and the sources they used to help them determine the meaning.
So maybe the light is blocked by these little children's bodies. It causes that shadow to form. What did we use to help us?
Look how broken.
Very good. Okay, keep reading.
Students who were not involved in a teacher-directed lesson participated in a Chromebook station and an exploration station. Students had an opportunity to explore objects, texts, and online resources that further enhanced their understanding of light and sound. At the end of the lesson, students were brought back together on the carpet. At that point, the teachers revisited the anticipation guide in order for students to confirm or revise their thinking.
Loud or soft? Do you agree, disagree, or are you unsure?